You need to see this. It's serious.
What is it? I'm not interested.
This proves everything. Look,
I don't care. Leave me alone.
you will regret this.
This document isn't what we expected.
What do you mean?
The numbers are all wrong. Look,
Let me see that.
we need to figure this out.
I agree.
You need to see this.
What is it? Let me see.
It's the proof. Take it.
This changes everything.
Exactly. We need to act now.
The tension crackled in the air as Kendra Whitmore jammed her heel into the aisle, her legs stretched wide in a deliberate challenge, blocking Parker Cole's path. Her calf pressed firmly against his shin, slow, intentional, daring him to make any move. Phones snapped up all around them. A flight attendant froze in place. "Don't just stand there," Kendra barked louder, her voice feeding on the stairs. "First class isn't a handout. You people always try to sneak up here." Parker said nothing. He stood perfectly still while the supervisor fumbled with boarding passes and Kendra narrated her victimhood to strangers. She had no idea she was humiliating the man who controlled the $500 million contract her husband's company could not survive without. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because the next story is one you can't miss. Parker Cole stood motionless in the first-class aisle, his leather briefcase held steady at his side. Sunlight streamed through the airplane windows, highlighting his assigned seat, which was currently occupied by a woman who had not bothered to look up from her phone. "Excuse me," Parker said quietly. "I believe you're in my seat." The woman, Kendra Whitmore, slowly raised her head. Her perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her phone as she gave him a dismissive once-over. Despite his impeccable charcoal suit and silk tie, she curled her lip. "Seats like this aren't for people like you," she said, her voice pitched to Carrie. "Go find the back where you belong." The cabin seemed to freeze. A passenger across the aisle lowered his newspaper. Someone a few rows back whispered, "Oh my God." The soft clicks of phone cameras being activated peppered the tense silence. Parker maintained his composure, though his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew his boarding pass. "My seat assignment is the one you're sitting in. I'd be happy to show you my ticket." Kendra let out a harsh laugh. "Cute forgery. You people always try this." She shifted in the seat, making herself more comfortable. "I fly first class every week. I know exactly who belongs here and who doesn't." A young flight attendant hovering nearby twisted her hands together, clearly uncomfortable. Her name tag read, Sophie. She glanced between Parker and Kendra, then down at her passenger manifest. "Sir," she began hesitantly, "let me just verify." "There's nothing to verify," Kendra cut in. "I'm not going to let someone pull this kind of scam. He needs to move along before he makes any more trouble." More phones appeared. The cabin's atmosphere grew heavier with each passing second. A businessman in the next seat stared intently at his laptop, pretending not to notice. A woman pressed her call button, then quickly canceled it. Parker stood perfectly still, his expression neutral. The boarding pass remained extended in his hand, a silent refutation of Kendra's accusations. He had faced this before, the assumptions, the dismissals, the casual cruelty masked as concern. His success had taught him that patience was a weapon and timing was everything. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "I'd appreciate you vacating my assigned seat." Kendra's face flushed red. "Are you threatening me?" She clutched her designer handbag closer. "Did everyone hear that? He's trying to intimidate me." The junior flight attendant finally found her voice. "Ma'am, if I could just see both of your boarding passes..." "Call your supervisor," Kendra snapped. "Now. I won't be harassed like this." She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "My husband's firm practically keeps this airline in business. He'll be very interested to hear how you're handling this situation." Sophie looked desperately toward the front galley. "I'll get my lead," she said, hurrying away. Kendra smiled triumphantly, settling back in the seat. "You should really know your place," she said to Parker, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It would save everyone so much trouble." The other passenger's discomfort was palpable now. A woman quickly donned her noise-canceling headphones. A man in business class, visible through the curtain divider, shook his head in disgust, though whether at Kendra's behavior or Parker's presence wasn't clear. Parker remained where he stood, briefcase still at his side, boarding pass still extended. His calm felt purposeful now, earned through years of similar moments. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't defend himself. He simply occupied his space, refusing to be moved by her attempts to shame him out of what was rightfully his. The lead flight supervisor appeared, a tall woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun. She took in the scene. Kendra ensconced in the seat, Parker standing silently in the aisle, the ring of watching passengers. "What seems to be this problem here?" she asked, though her eyes darted nervously to Kendra's designer watch and wedding ring. "This man is trying to steal my seat," Kendra announced before anyone else could speak. "He's making me feel very unsafe. I think you need to remove him." The supervisor turned to Parker. "Sir, can I see your boarding pass?" Parker nodded once and handed it over. The paper shook slightly in the supervisor's hands as she examined it. "Ma'am," the supervisor said carefully to Kendra, "this gentleman's boarding pass does show him assigned to that seat." Kendra folded her arms across her chest, a smirk playing at her lips. "Well, I'm not moving. Call security if you have to. My husband will sort this out." She raised her phone, already dialing. "In fact, I'll have him do that right now." The supervisor shot Parker an apologetic look, but her voice wavered with uncertainty. "Sir, perhaps we could find you another seat." Parker finally spoke, his words measured and clear. "I'll wait while you call security." His calm seemed to unnerve Kendra more than any anger would have. She pressed her phone tighter to her ear, her smirk faltering slightly. "That's right," she said loudly into the phone, though no one had answered yet. "Some man is trying to cause trouble on my flight. You'll want to handle this quickly." The supervisor lifted her hand to her radio, calling for backup as Kendra settled deeper into the seat, radiating smugness and certainty that the system would, as always, work in her favor. The first-class cabin had become a pressure cooker of tension. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, torn between watching the drama unfold and pretending to be absorbed in their phones or magazines. The aisle was getting crowded now. The lead supervisor stood with her hands clasped tightly together, while two junior flight attendants hovered nearby, exchanging worried glances. "I've double-checked the manifest," the supervisor said, her voice barely above a whisper. She held up both boarding passes. "Mr. Cole is the assigned passenger for that seat." Kendra's face contorted. "Are you calling me a liar?" Her voice shot up several octaves, causing a baby in the next section to start crying. "This is absolutely ridiculous. I've never been treated so poorly in my life." She jabbed her manicured finger toward Parker, who hadn't moved from his spot in the aisle. "This man has been intimidating me since the moment he walked on board. He's trying to bully me out of my seat, and now you're helping him." The supervisor took a step back, clearly rattled by Kendra's volume. "Ma'am, please lower your voice." "I will not lower my voice." Kendra's hand shot to her chest in practiced outrage. "Do you have any idea who my husband is? Damian Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Consulting Group." She paused for effect, watching recognition dawn on the supervisor's face. "That's right. We practically keep half your fleet in the air. Our firm handles contracts worth millions to this airline." A ripple went through the cabin. A man in a business suit 2 rows back suddenly became very interested in the scene. The junior flight attendants exchanged another look, this one more alarmed. "And now," Kendra continued, her voice dripping with venom, "you're trying to force me out of my seat because this man claims it's his. I've never felt so unsafe on a flight in my life." The supervisor's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "Ma'am, perhaps we could temporarily move you to another first-class seat while we sort this." "Absolutely not." Kendra's tone was pure ice. She deliberately stretched her legs out into the aisle, crossing them at the ankles. Her red-bottomed designer shoes formed a barrier directly in Parker's path. "I'm not moving anywhere. In fact, I feel threatened just having him stand there staring at me." Her lips curled into a smirk as she looked directly at Parker. The message was clear. If he wanted to reach his seat, he'd have to step over her legs. The trap was set. More phones appeared, recording the scene. Kendra raised her voice again, making sure every word carried. "Everyone saw how aggressive he was earlier. I'm a woman traveling alone and he's trying to intimidate me out of my seat. I don't feel safe at all." The supervisor pressed her radio, speaking quietly. "Security to first class, please. Priority." 2 uniformed airport security officers appeared within minutes, making their way up the crowded aisle. Kendra immediately straightened, wiping away invisible tears. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she gushed. "This man has been harassing me, trying to steal my seat. I've been so scared." The officers turned their attention to Parker, who stood exactly where he had been, his expression unchanged. "Sir, can we see your can we see your ID that boarding pass says not As Parker reached for his wallet, Kendra began narrating to nearby passengers in a stage whisper. He just walked up and demanded my seat, claimed he had a first-class ticket. Can you believe it? In all my years of flying. She shook her head dramatically. Thank goodness my husband has connections. He'll make sure this is handled properly. The security officers examined Parker's documents while Kendra continued her performance. He's been so aggressive, practically threatening me. I'm still shaking. She held up her perfectly steady hand as evidence. Sir, one of the officers said to Parker, we're going to need you to step into the aisle while we sort this situation out. Parker nodded once, his face a mask of dignity. Despite the public humiliation, he would have to maneuver around Kendra's outstretched legs exactly as she had planned. The entire cabin watched as Parker carefully stepped sideways, forced to twist his body awkwardly to avoid touching her. Kendra's smirk grew wider as she settled deeper into the seat, adjusting the seat recline for maximum comfort. Much better, she said loudly. I already feel safer with him away from me. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably. The junior flight attendant who had first tried to help looked close to tears, but no one spoke up. The security officers continued questioning Parker in full view of everyone, while Kendra made a show of pulling out her phone, no doubt to call her husband again. Sunlight streaming through the windows now felt harsh and exposing, highlighting every second of Parker's public questioning. He answered each query calmly, his voice steady despite the dozens of eyes fixed on him. But there was no missing the humiliation of the moment, a successful businessman being treated like a threat, while his assigned seat was occupied by a woman weaponizing every privilege at her disposal. The aircraft door remained propped open. Passengers shifted restlessly in their seats, while flight attendants whispered urgently into their phones near the galley. The two security officers flanked Parker, who stood perfectly still in the aisle, his briefcase at his feet. Kendra's volume increased with each passing moment, as if silence was her enemy. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she announced to the cabin at large. The sheer audacity of it all. She gestured toward Parker with a dismissive wave, standing there trying to intimidate a woman traveling alone. A flight attendant attempted to pass through with a nervous, "Excuse me," but Kendra ignored her, launching into another tirade. Do you know what the real problem is here? She directed this at no one in particular, though her voice carried to every corner of first class. It's that some people just don't understand their place anymore. My husband's company literally keeps men like him employed. We sign their paychecks. The security officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them cleared his throat. Ma'am, if we could just... Oh, I'm not finished. Kendra cut him off, her voice sharp. Look at him standing there all silent and superior. What's wrong? Nothing to say now? She leaned forward in Parker's seat and smiled coldly. Cat got your tongue? The lead security officer tried again. Perhaps if we could all take a moment to de-escalate. Kendra's laugh was harsh and cutting. De-escalate? No, I don't think so. In fact, she pulled out her phone, waving it like a weapon. I think it's time we had him removed from this flight entirely. One call to my husband, and trust me, this airline will make sure he never books another ticket. She began dialing, her movements deliberately slow and theatrical. It's almost sad, really. Did you actually think you could just walk onto this flight and take whatever seat you wanted? That's not how the world works, sweetie. The cabin had grown uncomfortably quiet. Even the baby that had been crying earlier had fallen silent, as if sensing the tension. Kendra's voice seemed to fill every space. You know what's funny? She continued, thumb hovering over the call button. You haven't said a single word in your defense. Smart move, actually, because there's nothing you could say that would... What did you say your husband's company was called? Parker's voice, when it finally came, was quiet but crystal clear. The contrast with Kendra's shrill tones was striking. He stood exactly as he had been, his posture relaxed but professional. Kendra blinked, thrown off by the unexpected question. Then her smugness returned. Whitmore Consulting Group. Perhaps you've heard of it, though I doubt you move in those circles. She emphasized each word with obvious relish. We handle major corporate contracts, aviation, technology, finance, the kinds of deals that keep this entire industry running. Thank you for clarifying that. Parker's tone remained measured, almost gentle. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed his phone. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I mentioned this, but moments before boarding this flight, I signed an executive decision. He glanced at his watch, then back at Kendra. As of that moment, Whitmore Consulting Group's $500 million annual contract with Cole Innovations was terminated, effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. Someone in the third row dropped their magazine. Parker continued, his voice still perfectly controlled. I should introduce myself properly. Parker Cole, CEO and majority shareholder of Cole Innovations. He paused, allowing the information to settle. The same Cole Innovations that represents roughly 40% of your husband's annual corporate portfolio. A soft O emerged from somewhere in business class. The termination notice has already been delivered to your husband's office, Parker added. I imagine he'll be receiving it right about now, actually. The color began draining from Kendra's face. Her phone, still held aloft, trembled slightly. I don't normally discuss business matters in public spaces, Parker continued, but since you seemed so interested in explaining how corporate relationships work, I thought you might appreciate the update. Murmurs rippled through first class. Phones that had been recording the confrontation stayed up, but now they were trained on Kendra's rapidly crumbling expression. The security officers had taken small steps backward, creating distance between themselves and what was quickly becoming a very different situation. Kendra's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound emerged. Her face had gone from flushed with anger to ashen in seconds. The phone in her hand began to vibrate, likely her husband calling, but she seemed frozen, unable to answer or even move. The whispers in the cabin grew louder. A businessman in row 3 was frantically typing on his phone, probably checking stock prices. Someone whispered, Cole Innovations, in a tone of delayed recognition. The junior flight attendant, who had first tried to help Parker, was failing to suppress a smile. The lead flight supervisor touched Kendra's arm gently but firmly. Ma'am, could you step aside for a moment? Her professional tone carried an edge of newfound authority. The earlier hesitation had vanished. Kendra jerked away from the touch, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle even to her own ears. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. She raised her voice, addressing the cabin again. He's obviously bluffing. Do you really think someone like him could... Her phone buzzed again, more insistently. Damien's name flashed on the screen, accompanied by missed calls and a string of increasingly urgent text messages. Kendra's fingers trembled as she swiped to read them. I need a moment, she announced to no one in particular, her voice catching. This is all just a misunderstanding. The supervisor turned to Parker. Sir, would you mind taking your seat temporarily while we sort this out? She gestured to the seat with pointed emphasis. Of course. Parker moved past them with fluid grace, settling into the leather first-class seat as if the last minutes hadn't happened. He removed a laptop from his briefcase and opened it, the picture of calm productivity. Kendra retreated to the galley area, phone pressed to her ear. Damien, there's this man on my flight who's saying... Her husband's voice cut through so sharply that passengers in nearby seats could hear it. What the hell did you do? What exactly did you say to Parker Cole? He was trying to take my seat, and I simply... Your seat? Damien's volume made Kendra pull the phone away from her ear. Do you have any idea what's happening right now? The entire board is in emergency session. Our stock is already dropping. Cole Innovations just pulled $500 million in contracts. Kendra's voice dropped to a harsh whisper, though her words still carried. But surely you can fix this. Call someone. Use your connections. Fix this? Damien's laugh was ugly. Cole Innovations represents 40% of our annual revenue. 40%, Kendra. Do you understand what that means? The SEC filing just hit the wires. We're looking at immediate layoffs, possibly bankruptcy if other clients follow suit. There was a pause filled with muffled shouting in the background. Tell me exactly what happened. Every word. Kendra turned away from watching eyes, pressing herself against the galley wall. He was being very aggressive, Damien, very threatening. I was only defending myself. Threatening? There are videos all over social media showing you stealing his seat and making racial comments. It's trending already. Papers shuffled in the background. Do you know who Parker Cole is, what he represents in this industry? Before Kendra could answer, the lead supervisor approached with a tablet in hand. Mrs. Whitmore, I've just received confirmation from our corporate liaison office. She turned the screen so Kendra could see the note attached to Parker's profile. The words, Global CEO, Cole Innovations, stood out in bold text, along with several VIP designations. As this is Mr. Cole's assigned seat, I'll need you to gather your belongings and move to your actual seat assignment. The supervisor's tone was polite but immovable. Immediately, please. Kendra pressed the phone tighter to her ear. Damien, you need to call the airline. Use whatever influence we have. Influence? His voice cracked. Our influence is evaporating by the second. The damage you've done. He took a shuddering breath. Just get off that plane without making things worse, if that's even possible now. The line went dead. Kendra stared at her phone's dark screen, her carefully maintained composure cracking. Her hands shook as she gathered her designer handbag and carry-on items. The walk back to her assigned seat felt endless, each step accompanied by the soft clicks of phones recording her retreat. She avoided looking at Parker as she passed, but she could feel his presence, calm, unmoved, radiating quiet power that made her earlier assumptions seem catastrophically foolish. The seat she'd been assigned felt like a punishment now. Every passenger who caught her eye quickly looked away, their judgment palpable. The lead supervisor made one final announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We'll be closing the aircraft door momentarily to begin our departure procedures. The heavy door sealed with a decisive thunk, trapping them all together in the pressurized cabin. Kendra sat rigidly in her seat, her breathing shallow, her thoughts racing. The humiliation burned through her, transforming into something darker with each passing second. She could feel her social capital dissolving. Imagine the text messages and social media posts already circulating through her carefully curated network. Her gaze fixed on Parker's profile, visible just ahead across the aisle. He was reading something on his laptop, his expression neutral, apparently unconcerned with the chaos he'd unleashed in her world. The sight of his composure made something twist inside her. This wasn't over. It couldn't be over. The flight attendants began their safety demonstration, but Kendra didn't see them. Her eyes remained locked on Parker, burning with quiet fury. She had built her life on social power, the ability to make or break others with a word, a snub, a carefully placed rumor. Now that power lay in shambles, but she still had Damien's resources, his connections, his influence. She watched Parker's steady hands type something on his laptop, each keystroke feeling like a personal assault. The rage simmered, hardening into cold purpose. This man hadn't just taken her seat, he'd challenged her entire world, and she would make him regret it. The plane descended through San Francisco's signature fog, banking slowly over the bay. Throughout the flight, tension had hung in the pressurized cabin like an invisible smoke. Parker had worked steadily on his laptop, responding to emails and reviewing contracts while feeling Kendra's stare burning into him from across the aisle. The wheels touched down with a gentle bump. As other passengers reached for their phones and overhead bags, a flight attendant approached Parker's seat. "Mr. Cole?" Her voice was apologetic but firm. "I've been asked to have you remain seated after we arrive at the gate." Parker nodded, maintaining his composed demeanor. He had suspected something like this might happen. Kendra had spent most of the flight typing furiously on her phone, pausing only to engage in intense, whispered conversations with various crew members. The plane taxied to the gate, its engines winding down. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, 2 uniformed airport security officers boarded through the front door. They moved with practiced efficiency straight to Parker's seat. "Sir, we need you to come with us regarding an incident reported during this flight." The older officer's hand rested casually near his belt, not threatening, but noticeably present. Parker closed his laptop with deliberate slowness. "Of course, though I'd like to note that any incident is well documented by multiple passenger videos." "That's part of what we need to discuss, sir." The younger officer gestured toward the aisle. "If you'll come with us now." From her seat, Kendra watched with poorly concealed satisfaction as Parker was made to stand and walk ahead of the officers. Other passengers shifted uncomfortably, several pulling out phones to record this new development. The junior flight attendant who had initially tried to help Parker couldn't meet his eyes as he passed. "Make sure you check his bags carefully," Kendra called out, her voice carrying clearly through the cabin. He seemed very agitated during the flight, very unstable. Parker kept walking, his back straight, his pace unhurried, but he felt the weight of every stare, every whisper, every phone camera tracking his exit. This was a familiar dance, power reasserting itself, the system closing ranks. He had seen it before, been through it before, but that didn't make it any less infuriating. They escorted him through the jet bridge and into the terminal where travelers paused to watch the spectacle of a well-dressed businessman being led away by security. Some recognized him. He heard his name whispered, saw phones raising to capture the moment. "This way, sir." The officers directed him down a service corridor away from the main concourse. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and institutional. Behind them, Kendra emerged from the plane like a queen making an entrance. She had fixed her makeup, adjusted her designer outfit, and now played to her audience with practiced skill. "It was terrifying," she told the gathering crew members, her voice carrying down the corridor. "I just hope you've all learned something about properly screening passengers. Someone could have been hurt." The officers led Parker to a small office tucked away in the airport's administrative section. The room was bare except for a metal table, 3 chairs, and a security camera in the corner. One wall held a large mirror, obviously two-way glass. "Please have a seat, Mr. Cole." The older officer gestured to one of the chairs. "We've received a formal complaint about threatening behavior and harassment during the flight. We need to get your statement. I assume you've also received the unedited video footage showing Mrs. Whitmore attempting to steal my assigned seat," Parker said as he sat down, maintaining eye contact, and making several discriminatory remarks in the process. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. "We're gathering all available evidence. For now, we need to follow procedure." "Of course you do." Parker's tone remained professional, but carried an edge of weary familiarity. "Though I wonder if you're also following procedure with Mrs. Whitmore, who actually violated federal aviation regulations by refusing to vacate a seat that wasn't hers." Neither officer responded directly to this. Instead, they pulled out forms and began asking standard questions: name, address, purpose of travel. Parker answered each one precisely, neither volunteering additional information nor showing signs of agitation. Through the office's small window, he could see airport personnel hurrying past, some glancing in with poorly concealed curiosity. Somewhere out in the terminal, Kendra would be holding court, spinning her version of events. He could picture it clearly: the sympathetic nods, the shared outrage, the social media posts already spreading her narrative. His phone vibrated in his pocket, then again and again. The officers exchanged glances as the device continued to buzz with incoming notifications. "You can check that if you need to," the older officer said, perhaps hoping to appear reasonable. Parker removed the phone and saw his screen filled with alerts. His name was trending on multiple platforms. News outlets were picking up the story. Video clips, some complete, some suspiciously edited, were being shared and reshared. One headline caught his eye: "Tech CEO removed from flight after seat dispute." Another read: "Passenger claims harassment by executive in first-class confrontation." The narrative was already being shaped, the truth bent to serve power's purposes. But Parker had been here before. He had built his career by understanding how systems worked, including how they could be made to work against themselves. He placed the phone face down on the metal table, its continued vibrations creating a soft hum against the surface. The officers resumed their questioning, but Parker could see uncertainty in their expressions. They were realizing gradually that this situation was larger than a simple passenger dispute. Outside the office, footsteps hurried past, voices murmured, phones chimed and buzzed. The machinery of modern outrage was fully engaged now, grinding away at facts and context, reducing complex truth to simple, shareable stories. Parker sat straight in his uncomfortable chair, answering questions with calm precision, while his phone continued to vibrate with increasing urgency. The battle for narrative control had begun. The security officer's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Parker scrolled through his phone. Each headline felt like a carefully crafted blow. First-class confrontation. CEO threatens passenger mid-flight. Woman reports hostile behavior on flight. Aviation authority investigates high-stakes seat dispute. The younger officer cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole, we've received word from airline management. They're releasing you without charges, but they're suspending your flight privileges pending investigation." Parker finished, not looking up from his screen. Comment sections were already filling with predictable takes, each one more distorted than the last. A new email popped up from Damian Whitmore's corporate communications team. The subject line read, "Press release, statement regarding today's unfortunate incident." Parker opened it, his jaw tightening as he read the carefully worded character assassination. "We are deeply concerned by today's events, where an executive used his position to threaten our company and intimidate other passengers. This behavior has no place in modern business or civil society. Memories surfaced unbidden. Years ago, a luxury car dealership assuming he was lost. Some time ago, being asked to show extra ID at a private banking event where he was the keynote speaker. Some time ago, watching a board member's surprised expression when he walked in to lead the acquisition meeting. "Sir," the older officer's voice pulled him back, "you're free to go. But the airline has requested you exit through the service corridor for everyone's comfort." Parker stood, straightening his jacket. Of course. Heaven forbid anyone be made uncomfortable. His phone rang, his legal counsel's direct line. He answered while gathering his belongings. "Parker, I'm seeing the coverage. Damian Whitmore's people are moving fast. They've got 3 PR firms spinning this." "I know," Parker interrupted, voice low and controlled. "They're playing their usual game, but not this time." He paused, choosing his words carefully with the officers still present. "Remember that contingency file we prepared? The one marked pattern recognition, the documentation of their discriminatory contracting practices." "Yes, but hold it for now. Let them throw their punches first." Parker followed the officers into the service corridor. Its concrete walls were a sharp contrast to the terminal's polished surfaces. "Get the team ready, but no responses yet. This isn't a sprint." His counsel understood. "They'll try to bury you in bad press, paint you as unstable, dangerous." "Let them," Parker said, remembering Kendra's smug expression when security first approached him. "They think they know how this game works. They don't." They emerged into the loading area where a black car waited, arranged by his office, but a reporter had somehow found him, a young woman with a microphone already raised. "Mr. Cole, is it true you threatened violence over a seat assignment? Do you often use your company's contracts as weapons? Sources say." Parker kept walking, maintaining his dignified pace. More memories flickered, the first time he had been followed by store security. The neighbor who had called police when he was checking his own mailbox. The investor who had asked to speak to the actual CEO during his first funding round. His phone buzzed again. The airline's official statement. "We take all passenger safety concerns seriously. Until a full investigation is complete, Mr. Cole's travel privileges will be suspended." The reporter kept pace, nearly shouting. "Now, Mr. Cole, Mrs. Whitmore claims you made her feel unsafe. How do you respond to allegations of aggressive behavior?" Parker reached the car door, turning briefly to face the camera. The reporter thrust her microphone forward, eager for a reaction, any reaction that could feed the growing story. He simply nodded politely and slid into the back seat. As the car pulled away, his phone lit up with a text from his executive team. "Board meeting scheduled. Whitmore's firm launching full media offensive. Legal threats incoming." Another headline notification. "Aviation industry giant cuts ties with tech firm after CEO's mid-air meltdown." Parker watched the airport recede through the tinted windows. He had built his company by understanding systems, how they worked, how they failed, and most importantly, how they could be changed. The Whitmores thought they were fighting a battle over one seat, one flight, one news cycle. They were wrong. His phone buzzed with another call from legal counsel. Emergency response teams assembling. Crisis management protocols activating. The machinery of corporate warfare grinding into motion. But Parker wasn't going to fight on their terms, not this time. He had learned long ago that the game wasn't fair, but that didn't mean it couldn't be won. You just had to understand the real rules, the ones written in boardroom whispers and country club handshakes. The car merged onto the highway as more notifications flooded his screen. Kendra's face appeared on a news website, playing the role of rattled victim perfectly. Damian Whitmore's statement followed. All corporate concern and coded warnings. Parker switched off his phone's notifications. He didn't need to watch their performance. He had seen it all before, lived it before. But this time would be different. This time, he had receipts, years of them, carefully collected and preserved. The driver caught his eye in the rearview mirror. "Where to, sir?" "The office," Parker replied, his voice steady. The Whitmores thought they were burning him down. They didn't realize they were only illuminating their own weaknesses. Through the window, San Francisco's towers rose into the fog, a forest of glass and steel where power lived and moved and made its own rules, or thought it did. The setting sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Parker's hotel suite. San Francisco's skyline glowed orange and purple, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere inside. His temporary command center hummed with urgent activity. Laptops open, phones buzzing, team members speaking in hushed, focused tones. Lydia Chen, his head of communications, stood by the window with her tablet. The edited clip hit social media recently. It's already at millions of views. She turned the screen toward Parker. The grainy footage showed only the final moments, him standing over Kendra, his words about the contract stripped of context. They cut everything before it. Nathaniel Brooks, his chief legal officer, noted from the dining table, now covered in documents. No racial comments, no seat theft, nothing about her blocking the aisle. Just you standing, making what they're calling a financial threat. Parker loosened his tie, watching the city lights flicker to life. And the board's nervous, Lydia admitted. Chairman Davis called twice. He's worried about shareholder reaction, especially with the quarter ending soon. She scrolled through her notes. 3 major partners have requested emergency meetings. Whitmore's people are working the phones hard. The suite's TV played silently in the background, showing business news. Kendra's face appeared, carefully composed, tissues in hand. The caption read, "Passenger speaks out." I was terrified. Nathaniel muted the sound before Parker could hear her voice. "They're playing this perfectly," he said, frustration evident. Damian Whitmore's PR team is framing you as the angry executive who snapped over a simple misunderstanding. They're pushing the narrative that you weaponized your company's contract to bully a woman. A helpless woman, Lydia corrected, her tone bitter. They're leaning hard into that angle. The airline's social media is being flooded with demands for action. Parker's phone buzzed. Another board member expressing concerns about optics. He set it face down on the coffee table. "Show me everything they're using," he said quietly. Lydia pulled up multiple screens. Besides the edited video, they had 3 passenger statements, all from Kendra's section of the cabin, all describing him as intimidating. Local news was running with it. Business press was starting to pick up the story. Damian Whitmore released another statement an hour ago. She read from her tablet. "While we respect healthy business competition, using economic leverage to threaten and coerce is unacceptable. We stand firmly with my wife, who endured a frightening encounter that no passenger should face." Nathaniel snorted. "Frightening encounter, that's rich." "It's working, though," Lydia pointed out. "Comments are running heavily against us. The airline's investigation is trending toward a permanent ban. We're losing the narrative." Parker walked to the window, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the bay. "Then let's change it." He turned to face his team. "Lydia, how many passengers were recording?" "At least 6 that we could see, maybe more." "And the airline's internal footage?" Nathaniel answered. "Multiple angles. We've already submitted formal requests through legal channels." "Speed it up," Parker said. "Call in whatever favors we need. I want every second of unedited video from boarding to deplaning." He paused, considering. "And get me the passenger manifest, first class in adjacent rows." Lydia was already typing. "Looking for witnesses." "Looking for truth," Parker corrected. "Someone besides Kendra's friends must have seen everything. Find them." His phone buzzed again. Chairman Davis, a 3rd time. Parker let it ring. "There's more," Nathaniel said, pulling up an email. "Whitmore's firm just filed a civil suit. They're claiming emotional distress, business interference, and defamation. They're asking for an emergency injunction to prevent us from discussing the incident." "Of course they are," Parker said, his voice steady. "They want to control the story, keep us quiet while they shape public opinion." Lydia looked up from her tablet. "Parker, I have to ask, are you sure you want to fight this? We could issue an apology, claim mutual misunderstanding, offer to reinstate their contract. The board would support that approach." The question hung in the air. Outside, the city's lights twinkled like stars, each one representing thousands of people who would soon judge this moment. The easy path was clear. Back down, apologize, move on. Let Kendra have her victory. Let Damian protect his wife's reputation. Let the system work as it always had. Parker thought of every time he had stayed quiet, every slight he had endured with professional politeness, every coded comment he had pretended not to hear. He thought of younger people watching this unfold, learning the same bitter lessons he had learned. "No," he said finally. "No apologies. Not this time." He turned to his team. "Lydia, activate every media contact we have. I want them ready when we move. Nathaniel, prepare response filings, not just to their suit, but for regulatory complaints. This goes beyond one incident." His phone lit up with the text from Lydia's social media team. 3 passengers confirmed willing to share full videos. 2 more considering, waiting for contact from others. Parker nodded. Good. But we wait to release anything until we have it all. No partial truths. When we move with everything. The city hummed below, millions of lives intersecting in countless ways. Somewhere out there, Kendra was probably giving another interview. Damien was probably meeting with lawyers, and the carefully constructed narrative was probably spreading further. Let them think they were winning. Let them believe their edited clips and tearful interviews would be enough. Let them trust in the same old systems that had always protected them. His phone buzzed one final time. Confirmation that a fourth passenger had agreed to share their unedited footage. Lydia's team was already coordinating collection. Nathaniel drafted subpoenas for the airline security feeds. The pieces were falling into place. Night settled fully over San Francisco. The city's lights now bright against the darkness. In hotels and homes across the bay, people watched edited clips and read slanted headlines, forming opinions based on carefully crafted lies. But truth had a way of emerging, one unedited frame at a time. The city lights cast a soft glow through the hotel suite windows as Parker settled into the leather armchair. His laptop screen illuminated his face, showing faces in the video conference grid. His complete legal response team assembled from across 3 time zones. The first unedited video dropped recently. Jessica Martinez, his social media director, reported. Her window showed a bustling war room behind her. It's already at millions of views. The second and third recordings followed minutes apart. On another screen, social media analytics painted a clear picture. The hashtag exposing Kendra Whitmore's lies was climbing rapidly. Public sentiment graphs showed a dramatic reversal. Play the cabin footage again, Parker's lead counsel requested. I want to ensure we've properly cataloged every interaction. The main screen switched to high-definition video shot from 3 rows behind. The timing could not have been better. A passenger had started recording the moment Kendra first challenged Parker. Her voice rang clear through the laptop speakers. Seats like this aren't for people like you. Go find the back where you belong. The footage continued, uncut and damning. Every dismissive gesture, every racial undertone, every moment of calculated aggression played out in perfect clarity. When it reached the part where she deliberately blocked the aisle with her legs, several team members shook their heads in disgust. The airline's internal cameras confirm everything, Nathaniel reported, sharing his screen to show multiple angles. We have complete coverage from 4 different security feeds. There's no room for misinterpretation. Lydia's window lit up as she joined the call. Major news networks just picked up the story. They're running the full footage at the top of the hour. Business channels have both requested statements. Parker watched the reaction metrics climb. Comments flooded in. This is disgusting behavior. She knew exactly what she was doing. Justice for Parker Cole. His phone buzzed. Chairman Davis again, but this time with a different tone. Saw the full video. The board stands with you. Whatever you need. The airline just issued their statement, Nathaniel announced, sharing his screen. Following review of complete footage from the flight, we acknowledge that seat assignment protocols were not properly followed. We are conducting a thorough investigation of all parties involved. We regret any inconvenience to our valued passengers. Neutral enough to avoid legal exposure, Parker's counsel noted, but clear enough to distance themselves from Kendra's version. Lydia's team shared more metrics. The edited clip that had dominated early coverage was now being thoroughly debunked. Aviation forums dissected every frame. Business commentators analyzed the power dynamics. Social justice advocates highlighted the racial undertones. Damien Whitmore's PR team has gone silent, Lydia reported. Their last post was recently, before the unedited footage emerged. Parker allowed himself to relax slightly. The truth was out, unfiltered and undeniable. His phone continued buzzing with supportive messages from industry peers and board members who had wavered earlier. Mr. Cole, his lead counsel spoke carefully, while this is certainly a positive development, we should discuss contingency planning. The Whitmores still have significant resources and connections. Agreed, Nathaniel added. Their civil suit is still active. They could attempt to seal the footage through emergency motions. Lydia's window highlighted as she spoke. We are also tracking unusual activity on financial forums. There might be attempts to pressure your stock price or spook investors. Damien Whitmore doesn't accept defeat easily. The lead counsel continued. He's built his reputation on never backing down. We should expect escalation, possibly in ways we haven't anticipated. Parker nodded, studying the cascade of supportive comments still flowing across his screen. What's our next move? We maintain position, but stay alert, his counsel advised. Document everything, monitor all channels, keep our response teams on standby through the night. The next hours are critical. The team continued coordinating. Legal preparations, media monitoring protocols, security measures. Every possible angle needed coverage. Every potential vulnerability required protection. As the call wound down, Lydia shared one final update. Your approval ratings are at record highs. The public is firmly on your side. Even the early critics are walking back their statements. Stay focused, Parker reminded them. This isn't about popularity, it's about accountability. The video windows closed one by one as the teams signed off to their respective assignments. Parker sat in the dimming room, watching the truth continue to spread across social media. His phone had finally stopped buzzing. The crisis apparently paused for the night. The suite felt eerily quiet after hours of constant activity. Outside, San Francisco's lights still twinkled, but the city's rhythm had slowed to a gentle pulse. Parker stood by the window, reflecting on the day's whirlwind of events. From the confrontation on the plane to the attempted character assassination to this moment of apparent vindication, he walked through the suite, powering down monitors and closing laptops. The wall of screens that had dominated his afternoon went dark one by one. His phone showed one final message from Lydia. Media monitoring team in place for overnight shifts. Get some rest. Parker moved through his evening routine methodically, checking doors, reviewing his schedule for the next day, setting his alarm. The day's tension slowly ebbed as the suite grew darker. He reached for the last light switch, his hand pausing briefly as he surveyed the quiet room. The lights clicked off, plunging the suite into darkness, broken only by the city's glow through the windows. Parker headed toward his bedroom, the weight of the day finally settling on his shoulders. The harsh buzz of Parker's phone cut through the darkness, jolting him from a fitful sleep. His screen blazed with notifications, missed calls, texts, emails, all flooding in within the last minutes. Lydia's message appeared first. Urgent. New video released. Turn on any news channel now. Parker grabbed the remote, flicking on the main TV. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom. Exclusive new footage shows aggressive confrontation on the flight. The video playing above the chyron made his stomach drop. It showed him standing over Kendra's seat, but the angle was twisted, the timing manipulated. Someone had slowed his movements to appear menacing, cropped out Kendra's provocations, and amplified his voice to sound harsh. The careful dignity he had maintained throughout the confrontation had been edited into something sinister. His phone buzzed again. Nathaniel's message cut straight to the point. Networks picked it up. No fact-checking. Straight to air. The TV screen split into a panel discussion. Experts who had defended him hours ago now questioned his hidden aggression. Social media analysts dissected his threatening body language. A crisis management specialist called it a masterclass in gaslighting the public. The timestamp, Parker muttered, studying the video's metadata. They waited for maximum impact. The release was timed perfectly, hitting that vulnerable window when verification teams were skeletal and social media moved fastest. His counsel's call came through. The airline statement just dropped. It's bad. Parker opened the press release. Following new evidence regarding the incident on the flight, we are temporarily suspending Mr. Cole's flying privileges pending a comprehensive safety review. The comfort and security of our passengers remains our highest priority. The phone kept buzzing. Each notification struck like a physical blow. Global Tech pausing joint venture discussions. Board emergency meeting called. Stock futures dropping in pre-market trading. Whitmore firm files amended complaint citing new evidence. Parker paced the suite, watching his vindication crumble in real time. The hashtags were shifting. Cole exposed. First-class fraud. Damien was right. Hours of truth swept away by minutes of calculated deception. Lydia's team pushed back, highlighting the video's obvious manipulation. Technical experts pointed out the editing artifacts, but the damage was spreading faster than facts could follow. Damien Whitmore's fingerprints are all over this, his counsel said during their emergency call. The timing, the distribution, the immediate legal filing. This was orchestrated. They waited for us to relax. Let us think we'd won, then struck when our guard was down, Nathaniel added. Parker stood at the window. San Francisco's lights blurring as fatigue and frustration clouded his vision. His phone displayed another board member wavering. Maybe we should consider a temporary step back. The TV droned on, pundits debating his character as if they had known him for years. Social media algorithms amplified the controversy, feeding the frenzy. Every notification reminded him how quickly truth could be buried under avalanches of manufactured outrage. "They're calling for your resignation," Lydia reported grimly. "Social media's exploding." Parker watched a taxi wind through the streets below, its headlights cutting through the fog. Something about its steady progress sparked a realization. He had been playing defense, reacting, explaining, justifying. The Whitmores had counted on that, using his restraint against him. "Get me everything," he told his counsel. "All of it now. Everything." The full dossier on Damien's firm, every discriminatory complaint, every buried settlement, every instance where money bought silence. "I want his entire history of making problems disappear." His team paused, understanding dawning in their silence. "The airline's internal emails, too," Parker continued. "Their security footage, employee statements, passenger manifests. If they're choosing sides, let's see exactly how that decision was made." "That's aggressive," his counsel warned. "Once we start down that path." "They chose the path," Parker replied. "They chose it the moment Kendra decided my seat belonged to her. Everything since has been calculated. The complaints, the edited videos, the coordinated pressure. They're not trying to win an argument. They're trying to erase me." His phone buzzed again. Another partner wavering. Another headline questioning his integrity. But the notifications felt different now. Each one strengthened his resolve. "Mr. Cole," Lydia ventured, "this could get very ugly." "It's been ugly since the beginning," Parker said. "I just wasn't fighting back hard enough." He turned from the window, facing his team through the video call. No more reactions, no more explanations, no more hoping truth speaks for itself. We're done playing their game. The city stretched out below, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Damien and Kendra Whitmore probably felt secure in their victory, certain their power and privilege would shield them, as it always had. Parker studied the skyline, his reflection hardening in the glass. The time for defense was over. Now they would learn what real consequences felt like. His phone lit up with another wave of notifications, but he didn't bother checking them. Those messages belonged to the old narrative, the one where privilege always won, where money bought truth, where power meant never facing accountability. That narrative was about to change. Through the window, dawn's first hint began bleeding into the night sky. Parker stood motionless, watching light touch the horizon. The city was waking up to their version of events, but he would decide how this story ended. The suite's desk lamp cast a harsh glow across stacks of documents as Parker reviewed the final package. His laptop screen showed the early hour, but exhaustion had given way to sharp focus. 3 folders lay open before him, each representing a different weapon in the arsenal his team had assembled. Folder 1. The complete record. Raw security footage from multiple angles, unedited phone videos from 6 different passengers, audio recordings of Kendra's calls to airline staff, timestamps, metadata, and authentication certificates, everything needed to expose the deliberate manipulation of the viral clip. "The technical analysis is conclusive," Lydia confirmed through the video call. "We can prove exactly how they doctored that footage, every edit, every manipulation." Folder 2. The paper trail. Hundreds of internal emails from Damien Whitmore's firm obtained through disgruntled employees and legal discovery. Messages ordering the PR assault, strategy memos plotting retaliation, communications with friendly media outlets coordinating the hit pieces. Damien wasn't careful. He assumed power meant never having to hide his tracks. The arrogance was stunning. The emails painted a damning picture. Damien orchestrating a campaign to destroy Parker's reputation, not because of any real threat, but because his wife's ego demanded it. The casual cruelty in his language, the dismissive tone toward people like Cole, it was all there in black and white. Folder 3. The pattern. This was the heaviest weapon. Years of documented discrimination at Whitmore's firm, buried complaints, forced settlements, systematic exclusion of minority contractors, statistical proof of bias in hiring and promotion, a complete exposure of how money and influence had masked decades of institutional racism. This goes beyond one incident, Parker's counsel explained. It's a pattern of behavior they've paid millions to hide. Once this breaks, others will come forward. Parker studied the release schedule on his screen. The package would hit simultaneously across multiple channels: major media outlets, financial regulators, congressional oversight committees, shareholder groups, social media platforms, industry watchdogs. Every recipient would get the full dossier, not carefully curated pieces. The truth would flood every channel at once, overwhelming any attempt at damage control. The timing is critical, Lydia emphasized. We release when markets open, morning shows live, maximum visibility. Parker nodded, scanning the final checklist. His team had prepared this contingency from the beginning, understanding that people like the Whitmores never stopped at one attack. The package had been ready, waiting for the moment when half measures would no longer suffice. Legal implications? Parker asked. His counsel leaned into the camera. They'll sue, multiple suits, different angles, but everything here is documented. Truth is an absolute defense. More importantly, discovery would only reveal more evidence against them. The airline? Nathaniel asked. Their statement banning you crossed a line, Lydia replied. The emails prove they acted under pressure from Whitmore, not based on evidence. Their liability is significant. Parker stood, stretching muscles tight from hours of tension. The city outside was still dark, but the first commuters were appearing on the streets below. Soon, those sidewalks would fill with people heading to work, unaware that the morning's news would reshape their understanding of power and accountability. Collateral damage? He asked quietly. His team exchanged glances. They understood the question's weight. Significant, his counsel admitted. Whitmore's firm will lose contracts. Partners will distance themselves. Share prices will drop. Jobs will be affected. Innocent people, Parker said. Yes. But continuing to protect Whitmore's system means accepting that more innocent people will be hurt. That's the real collateral damage. The talent denied, the careers blocked, the voices silenced. Parker touched the folders, feeling the weight of lives and livelihoods contained in their pages. The Whitmores had forced this moment, believing their privilege made them untouchable. They never considered that someone might value truth more than comfort. His phone buzzed, another news alert about the aggressive passenger narrative, another attempt to erase his dignity, to make him accept humiliation as his due. The message joined hundreds like it, each assuming he would follow the familiar script. Apologize, step back, let power win again. Lydia's voice cut through his thoughts. Final confirmation needed, Mr. Cole. Do we proceed? Parker looked at his reflection in the window, the same composed expression he had maintained on the plane, the same dignity he had refused to surrender. Behind him, the room's light illuminated the evidence of systemic injustice waiting to be exposed. The market opens soon, Nathaniel said. Once we start, we'll be attacked, his counsel finished. They'll call it excessive, vindictive, disproportionate, Parker replied. They'll call it what they always call accountability when it finally reaches them. He turned back to his team, their faces serious in the video windows. Each had worked through the night, understanding the stakes. Each knew that morning would bring chaos. The sky outside showed the first hint of gray. Dawn approaching. Decision time. Parker sat at his laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. In a few hours, the Whitmores would wake up to their carefully constructed world crumbling. They would learn that power, no matter how entrenched, cannot shield forever against truth. His team waited, watching. The city stirred below. The moment stretched, heavy with consequence. Parker began typing. Release everything. 3 keystrokes sent the message. 3 words to end the old narrative. Sunrise was coming. Parker sat motionless in his leather armchair, the first rays of sunlight streaming through the hotel suite's floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone vibrated continuously against the side table, each notification marking another detonation in the carefully orchestrated release. The first wave hit. The unedited cabin footage spread across social media platforms like wildfire. Crystal clear audio captured Kendra's initial attack. Seats like this aren't for people like you. The full context restored. Viewers could see the deliberate way she blocked the aisle, her smirk as security approached Parker instead of her. Comments sections exploded, retweets multiplied exponentially, his laptop screen filled with updating feeds. Major news sites began replacing their overnight stories with urgent updates. The crawling headlines shifted tone. Developing. New evidence contradicts first-class confrontation claims. Breaking. Full footage shows passenger was targeted, not aggressor. Exclusive. Internal emails reveal coordinated attack on tech CEO. The second wave crashed. Lydia's voice came through his earpiece. Email package is propagating now. Financial press picking it up first. The internal communications from Whitmore Group hit business channels hardest. Analysts began parsing Damien's explicit instructions to bury Parker and make the story stick. Market watchers noted the timing on Damien's first retaliatory email, sent before the plane had even pushed back from the gate. Parker watched the scrolling tickers react in real time. Whitmore Group plunging in pre-market trading. Airline shares tumble on discrimination allegations. The regulatory hammer fell. Confirmation from the SEC, Nathaniel reported through the conference line. They've received the full documentation, same from the FAA regarding airline compliance issues. Major financial news sites posted alerts about multiple agencies launching preliminary reviews. The story was metastasizing beyond a simple passenger dispute into questions of corporate governance and regulatory compliance. Parker's phone rang, his board chairman. He let it go to voicemail. This wasn't the time for discussion. The truth needed no defense. The narrative collapsed completely. Cable news channels ran split-screen comparisons. Kendra's tearful interview from the previous evening beside unedited footage, proving each claim false. Hosts who had sympathetically platformed her story hours earlier now questioned their own coverage. The airline's hasty ban was scrutinized. Damien's manipulative emails were quoted directly. Social sentiment analysis coming in, Lydia noted. Public support is completely inverted. Hashtags are trending, all favoring our position now. Parker watched silently as years of the Whitmores' carefully maintained facade crumbled. Their weapons, media connections, legal threats, social pressure, turned to dust against simple documented truth. The pattern emerged. As the initial shock wore off, deeper analysis began. Financial reporters dug into Whitmore Group's history. Past discrimination complaints, previously buried, resurfaced. Industry watchers noted systematic exclusion of minority-owned contractors. Statistical analysis showed troubling patterns in hiring and promotion. 3 major shareholders have requested emergency board meetings, Nathaniel reported. Whitmore Group's chief counsel is trying to reach us through back channels. Parker sipped his now cold coffee, remembering countless boardrooms where he had been mistaken for support staff. How many others had faced the same assumptions, the same barriers? The evidence now flooding inboxes and newsrooms told that larger story. The damage spread. The airline issued a new statement suspending all contracts with Whitmore Group pending review. Their stock dropped sharply. Other corporate partners began distancing themselves, fearing contagion. Damien's carefully constructed network of influence showed its fragility. Parker's phone buzzed with a text from the CEO of a major tech firm that had distanced themselves the previous day. We acted hastily. Would appreciate a conversation when convenient. Similar messages arrived from other partners who had wavered. Their fear of Whitmore Group's influence evaporated in the harsh light of exposure. The airline's PR team scrambled to contain their own crisis. A press release announced the immediate suspension of 3 executives pending an internal investigation into serious allegations of discriminatory practices and improper influence. We are reviewing all protocols, their statement read, and we offer our sincere apology to Mr. Cole for his treatment. Parker's temporary flight ban disappeared from their system without fanfare. His status returned to its usual elite level, though that meant little now. Market analysts began connecting darker dots. Damien's influence hadn't just affected one flight or one contract. Evidence suggested years of systematic discrimination in Whitmore Group's contracting practices. Minority-owned businesses described similar patterns of exclusion and retaliation. The $500 million contract termination was just the thread that unraveled everything, a Bloomberg analyst observed. Pull on it, and the whole tapestry of corporate malpractice comes apart. By mid-morning, Damien's carefully constructed world lay in ruins. Major shareholders demanded emergency board meetings. Corporate partners initiated contract reviews. Politicians who had accepted Whitmore donations quietly announced plans to return them. Kendra's social media accounts went dark one by one. Her charity board positions disappeared from organizational websites. The country club where she had once held court posted notice of a membership review session. 4 congressional committees have requested documents, Nathaniel reported. Your contract termination is being cited as the catalyst that exposed broader systemic issues. They're particularly interested in the timing, how Damien's retaliation plans were in motion before the plane even left the gate. On TV, financial experts debated Whitmore Group's survival chances. Their stock had lost nearly half its value in a single morning. Trading halts became more frequent as sellers overwhelmed buyers. The market is voting with its feet, one analyst explained. This isn't just about one incident, it's about the rot that incident exposed. Parker's phone continued buzzing with messages from former critics, now eager to align themselves with him. He let most go unanswered. Their sudden support meant little compared to the broader implications of the morning's events. The news helicopters maintained their vigil over Whitmore headquarters, cameras broadcasting every arrival and departure. Federal agents carried out box after box of documents. Damien was nowhere to be seen. Confirmation from the SEC, Nathaniel said through the conference line. They're citing your contract termination as the initiating event in their formal investigation. They're particularly interested in the timing of Damien's retaliatory actions. Parker watched another trading halt flash across the screen. The Whitmore Group stock chart resembled a waterfall, straight down with occasional pauses at circuit breaker levels before resuming its plunge. The morning's events had transformed a single act of resistance into something far larger. Each new revelation spawned more questions, more investigations, more unraveling of carefully hidden truths. The afternoon sun streamed through the hotel's glass facade, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor of the lobby. Parker stood near the concierge desk, confirming details for his departure flight when a commotion near the entrance caught his attention. Kendra Whitmore burst through the revolving doors, her designer outfit wrinkled and her normally perfect hair askew. Her mascara left dark smudges beneath her eyes, and her hands trembled as she clutched an expensive leather handbag. The composed socialite who had demanded his removal from first class was gone, replaced by someone coming apart at the seams. "Mr. Cole." Her voice cracked as she rushed toward him, heels clicking frantically across the marble. "Please, I need to speak with you." Hotel security moved to intercept her, but Parker raised a hand, signaling it was okay. He remained where he stood, calm and collected as Kendra approached. "Just 5 minutes," she pleaded, lowering her voice, though it still shook with desperation. "Somewhere private, please." Several hotel guests had stopped to watch, some discreetly raising phones to record. The morning's news had made Kendra's face recognizable to millions. "The sitting area there will do fine," Parker replied, gesturing to a cluster of leather armchairs partially screened by large potted plants. He had no intention of being alone with her, knowing she might claim anything had happened behind closed doors. Kendra glanced nervously at the observers, but followed him to the chairs. Her designer purse slipped from her trembling fingers as she sat, spilling its contents across the floor. Lipstick, keys, and a phone with a cracked screen scattered around her feet. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she blurted, scrambling to gather her belongings. "You have to understand, this is destroying everything, our reputation, Damien's company, our whole lives." Parker sat quietly, hands folded in his lap. The composed businessman was a stark contrast to Kendra's dishevelment. "The country club suspended our membership this morning," she continued, her voice rising. "My closest friends won't answer my calls. The children's school called to discuss our situation. Even my sister, my own sister, told me not to contact her until this blows over." She choked back a sob. "You have to call off these investigators. Be reasonable. We can work something out." A small crowd had gathered near the lobby bar, pretending to be absorbed in conversations while watching the scene unfold. A hotel employee spoke quietly into a phone at the front desk, likely updating security. "Mrs. Whitmore," Parker said finally, his voice level and controlled. "What's happening now isn't something I control. But it's your company, your lawyers. You can stop this." "No," Parker replied simply. "I can't, and I wouldn't if I could." "We'll pay whatever you want," she pressed on, leaning forward. "Name your price. Damien will arrange it. Just call off the dogs." Parker shook his head slowly. "You still don't understand. This stopped being about money the moment you decided to weaponize your privilege against me. Every step of the way, you and your husband chose escalation. When I showed you my boarding pass, you mocked it. When the crew confirmed my seat, you called security. When I revealed the contract termination, you filed false complaints. When those failed, you tried to destroy my reputation. Kendra's face crumpled. I was just protecting what's mine. No. Parker corrected her gently. You were enforcing what you thought you were entitled to. There's a difference. The seat wasn't yours. The power you wielded wasn't earned. The consequences you're facing now, those you earned. But it's not fair, she wailed, mascara running freely. Now we're losing everything. Like you tried to make me lose everything. Parker's voice remained steady, but steel lay beneath the calm. The federal investigators, the SEC, the congressional committees, they're not acting on my behalf. They're responding to evidence of years of discrimination and corruption, evidence your husband's retaliation brought to light. Kendra's perfectly manicured nails dug into the leather armrests. Please, she whispered, her voice small and broken. I'll apologize publicly. I'll do anything. That's the problem, Mrs. Whitmore. You're only sorry because you got caught. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry for the consequences. There's a difference there, too. She stared at him, mascara stained, tears tracking down her cheeks. The carefully constructed facade of social superiority had crumbled completely, revealing the frightened, entitled person beneath. So that's it? She asked bitterly. You won't help us at all? The truth is helping you, Parker replied, standing smoothly. It's helping everyone who's ever been treated the way you treated me. Sometimes justice comes through consequences. Kendra's shoulders shook with poorly suppressed sobs. Nearby guests openly recorded now, capturing the complete reversal of power from that moment on the plane. The woman who had smugly demanded Parker's removal was now publicly undone, while he remained composed and dignified. Through the lobby's windows, reporters had gathered on the sidewalk, alerted to Kendra's presence by social media posts. Camera flashes sparked like lightning as she stumbled to her feet, clutching her disarrayed belongings. I hope you're satisfied, she choked out, but the words carried no weight now. Parker adjusted his suit jacket and checked his watch. Good afternoon, Mrs. Whitmore. He walked calmly toward the side exit, leaving Kendra to face the waiting media gauntlet alone. The cameras captured everything, her tears, her disarray, her complete humiliation. But Parker didn't look back. He had a flight to catch, and there was nothing more to be said. The airline's corporate headquarters gleamed in the late afternoon sun, its glass and steel facade reflecting the golden California light. Inside the main conference room, camera crews jostled for position as journalists filled every available seat. The tension was palpable. This wasn't just another corporate press event. Airline CEO Grant Ellison stood at the podium, flanked by his executive team. Their usual confidence was replaced by visible discomfort. Behind them, a row of board members sat rigid in their chairs. At the center of the long table, Parker Cole sat composed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, hands folded calmly before him. Good afternoon, Ellison began, his voice carrying through the microphone. We're here today to address the deeply troubling events that occurred on the flight from Chicago to San Francisco. He cleared his throat, glancing at his prepared statement. But more importantly, we're here to acknowledge our failure in handling those events and to make things right. Cameras clicked rapidly as Ellison turned toward Parker. Mr. Cole, on behalf of our entire organization, I want to extend our sincerest apology. You were subjected to discriminatory treatment, false accusations, and public humiliation, first by another passenger, and then by our own failure to properly investigate before taking action. The room fell silent as Ellison continued. Effective immediately, we are formally reinstating Mr. Cole's flight privileges and elite status. Furthermore, we have initiated a comprehensive review of our incident response protocols, with particular emphasis on preventing discriminatory escalation. A reporter's hand shot up. What about the crew members who sided with Mrs. Whitmore? The flight crew involved has been suspended pending review, Ellison replied. We're also implementing mandatory anti-bias training across all customer-facing positions. Another journalist called out, Mr. Cole, do you consider this response adequate? Parker leaned forward to his microphone, his voice steady and measured. This isn't about adequate or inadequate. It's about accountability and change. The airline's leadership has demonstrated both today. And the Whitmores? Someone pressed. That matter is now in the hands of appropriate authorities, Parker replied diplomatically, though everyone knew the Whitmore Group stock had lost nearly 40% of its value since the morning. The airline's chief compliance officer stepped forward, outlining new policies, enhanced training protocols, clearer escalation procedures, and the formation of an independent passenger advocacy board. With each announcement, the story shifted further from personal conflict to systemic reform. In the second row, Parker's legal counsel nodded slightly. Everything was proceeding according to plan, not revenge, but restructuring, not humiliation, but change. We've also received confirmation, Ellison added, that our own board has approved a significant expansion of our diversity and inclusion initiatives, with Mr. Cole's company serving as a key advisory partner. This announcement sparked another flurry of questions. The partnership wasn't just symbolic. It was a multi-million-dollar commitment to substantive change. A senior reporter stood, addressing Parker directly. "Sir, your company's stock has risen since this morning. Do you feel vindicated?" Parker adjusted his microphone thoughtfully. This was never about stock prices or personal victory. It was about standing firm when faced with injustice, about refusing to let power and privilege override dignity and truth. His words carried weight because they weren't delivered with anger or triumph, but with quiet certainty. The same composure he had shown on the plane now commanded the room. "But surely," another reporter pressed, "you must feel some satisfaction about the Whitmore's downfall." "What I feel," Parker replied, "is hope that this incident serves as a reminder. Accountability isn't punitive, it's corrective. Change isn't revenge, it's progress." The press conference concluded with Ellison announcing immediate policy implementation. As cameras continued rolling, Parker stood and shook hands with the airline executives, a simple gesture that somehow symbolized the shift in power dynamics since that morning on the plane. In the lobby afterward, Parker's phone buzzed constantly with updates. The SEC had opened a formal investigation into the Whitmore Group. 3 major banks had suspended their relationships with the firm. Congressional committees were scheduling hearings. The system that had once protected the Whitmores was now dismantling their empire. "Your car is ready, Mr. Cole," a staff member announced. "We've arranged priority check-in for your return flight this evening." Parker nodded his thanks, gathering his belongings. Outside, the media crowd had thinned, but not disappeared. They called questions as he walked to his waiting car. "Mr. Cole, any comment on Damian Whitmore's resignation? Has Kendra Whitmore attempted to contact you again? What about the federal investigation?" Parker simply smiled politely and kept walking. He had said what needed saying. The rest would unfold as it should. Later that evening, Parker approached his gate at San Francisco International Airport. The same terminal that had witnessed his humiliation hours earlier now buzzed with different energy. Passengers nudged each other, pointing discreetly. Some nodded respectfully. Others smiled in quiet support. The gate agent stood straighter as he approached. "Good evening, Mr. Cole. We've upgraded you to first class. Complimentary, of course." "Thank you," he replied simply, accepting his new boarding pass. As he walked down the jet bridge, flight attendants greeted him by name, their respect genuine rather than procedural. Passengers watching his entrance saw not the man who had been falsely accused and escorted off a plane, but the leader whose dignity had transformed a moment of injustice into a catalyst for change. In his seat, 2A again, Parker settled in quietly, neither broadcasting his presence nor hiding from it. A flight attendant approached with a glass of water. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Cole," she said warmly. "We're honored to have you with us." The first-class cabin hummed with pre-departure activity as passengers settled into their seats. Parker Cole sat in his assigned seat, no controversy this time, and watched the last rays of sunlight paint the tarmac in shades of amber. Flight attendants moved efficiently through their preparations, offering genuine smiles as they passed his row. A young businessman across the aisle kept glancing his way, clearly recognizing him from the day's news coverage. Parker maintained his usual composure, neither encouraging nor discouraging the attention. He had learned long ago that true dignity wasn't about seeking validation or avoiding notice. It was about remaining steadfast in who you are. The cabin lights dimmed briefly as the aircraft systems cycled through their pre-flight checks. Parker's phone buzzed one final time before he switched it to airplane mode. The message was from his legal counsel. Whitmore Group board meeting ended. Damian's resignation effective immediately. Criminal charges pending. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the day settle. When he opened them, the flight attendants were completing their final checks. The same nervous energy that had filled this cabin that morning was absent now, replaced by routine professionalism. "Cabin crew, please prepare for departure," came the standard announcement. But then, the captain's voice continued, departing from the usual script. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Before we begin our flight to Chicago this evening, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone special on board with us. Mr. Parker Cole is with us in first class tonight. Many of you may recognize his name from today's news. What you might not know is that Mr. Cole's actions have already initiated significant changes in airline policy and industry standards. His professionalism and dignity in the face of discrimination have set an example that will benefit passengers and crew members for years to come." The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause. It wasn't the awkward, obligatory kind that sometimes follows public announcements. This was genuine appreciation, recognition of principle over power, of dignity over drama. Parker nodded quietly in acknowledgement, maintaining his characteristic reserve. A flight attendant caught his eye and smiled warmly. "Can I get you anything before takeoff, Mr. Cole?" "Just water, thank you," he replied, his voice carrying the same measured tone it had throughout the day's events. As the plane backed away from the gate, Parker's thoughts drifted to the morning's confrontation. He remembered Kendra Whitmore's smug certainty, her husband's attempted intimidation, the momentary victory of privilege over right. The cost of remaining silent in such moments, not just personal but systemic, had become painfully clear. The aircraft turned onto the runway, engines spooling up with increasing urgency. Through his window, Parker watched the last traces of sunset fade into deeper blues. His phone screen flashed one final notification before he turned it off completely. Kendra Whitmore's social media accounts deactivated amid backlash. The plane accelerated down the runway, pressing Parker gently back into his seat. As they lifted off, San Francisco's lights spread out below like scattered gems, then gradually dimmed as they climbed through the evening haze. He watched the city, where everything had changed, grow smaller, more distant. A news alert appeared on his seatback screen. Breaking. Federal prosecutors announced investigation into Whitmore Group financial practices. The headline scrolled past without fanfare. Justice moving forward with quiet inevitability. The flight attendant returned with his water. "We're so glad you're with us tonight, Mr. Cole," she said softly. "What happened this morning? Well, it needed to happen. Things needed to change." Parker thanked her with a slight nod. She was right. Change rarely came from comfort. Sometimes it required standing firm when others expected you to step aside, speaking truth when others demanded silence. Through his window, the last traces of twilight painted the clouds in deep purples and blues. The aircraft banked slightly, finding its course eastward. Below, the landscape disappeared into darkness, but above, stars began emerging with remarkable clarity. The captain's voice returned. "Folks, we've reached our cruising altitude. The weather ahead looks clear, and we're expecting a smooth flight to Chicago." Parker adjusted his seat slightly, feeling the tension of the day finally begin to ease. The victory wasn't in Kendra's humiliation or Damien's downfall. It was in the quiet certainty that standing firm had been right. The system that had protected their behavior for so long was now holding them accountable. A flight attendant dimmed the cabin lights, creating a cocoon of calm at altitude. Other passengers settled into their evening routines, some working on laptops, others already drifting to sleep. The drama that had dominated the day's news cycle seemed distant now, reduced to its proper perspective. The plane leveled off above a carpet of clouds, moonlight turning them silver. Parker watched their steady progress through the darkness, each mile carrying him further from confrontation toward resolution. His future, both personal and professional, stood secure, not because he had fought loudly, but because he had stood firmly. In the quiet of the cabin, surrounded by the gentle hum of engines and the soft murmur of conversations, Parker found his peace, not in triumph over others, but in the knowledge that dignity, maintained through crisis, had proven stronger than privilege wielded without principle. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.